Mr. Goodman, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Michael Goodman, current Dean of Students at Elm Middle School in Elmwood Park, located just steps away from Chicago. Finishing my third year as Dean of Students, 11 years of public education background, born and raised in Chicago, serving students in Chicagoland area. Excited to be here.
Perfect, perfect. And we were just talking earlier about TikTok, so I just want to continue this conversation really quick, and
Yeah.
then we'll get into the other stuff. But um, yeah, so like we were talking about the comments, and you were saying that there was a lot of backlash on one of the videos that you posted, just a lot of negative comments, right? Something like
Mhm.
that. So
Yeah, just what I've noticed about the videos that I've posted that have received the most views and most comments is it wasn't what I had planned to do, but it seemed like polarizing topics. The two that we talked about, one was this idea of schools suspending students who are caught filming a physical altercation. The other one was what was an April Fool's joke, but about students being allowed to use cell phones in class. Just the comments on both sides of the spectrum, people becoming professionals and all of these things and sharing. It gets down to political views.
yeah,
Um, and I've just kind of sat there and been like, you know what, I'm going to watch as my followers grow and my comments grow, and I'm not going to stress about it. But it's been interesting, during those experiences.
yeah, like the I don't know. I posted this one video a while back. This is probably what catapulted me forward, like to hit that 10,000 mark. Maybe I had like, I don't know, like a few thousand. And I just posted this video of me just walking to the gym. It was just me walking to the gym, and then some comments like just on the video, just that people could read some sort of caption. And that one video got me like 10,000 followers. Just that one video. And I was like, what is that? How is that? How is this one video? How did this one video just catapult me all the way to 10,000 all of a sudden? And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, that's weird. Um, and like I was saying, I would make more and more TikToks, and I would use my voice and state my opinion about certain things. And all of my
Hmm.
stuff is usually about students with difficult behavior and how to, my bend is always like restorative justice. My bend is always, building relationships with students with difficult behavior. That's always been my bend. So that's what I've talked about. And like, some of the things that I get in my comments, like one of the biggest things in my comments, the biggest pushback is like, we're not therapists. We're not therapists. We can't do this. We're not therapists. We can I get a lot of that. And
Hmm.
last time I've checked, I'm not a therapist either, right? I'm not a
Yeah.
therapist. I'm not one either. But the things I state, like keep a safe environment. Like keep a safe environment. That's You don't have to be a therapist to keep a safe environment. Demonstrate love, like the type of love that you find in the Bible. Like be patient, be kind. Don't hold a grudge. You don't have to be a therapist for that as well.
Yeah.
And create an environment of progress. Create an environment of progress where you just boost students up, like, hey, good job, way to go, and you're just building up their self-esteem. You don't have to be a therapist to do that as well. That's what I promote. That's all I promote, and I get a lot of pushback because of that. Three things. So
Luckily, I feel like I haven't gotten too much pushback on the views that I've shared on TikTok, which are my own. And I think I haven't gotten too much pushback yet because I feel like, you know, I'm supportive of teachers. I'm supportive of teachers taking ownership over their class.
yeah.
I'm supportive of public education, and I feel like it adds a lot of value. So I haven't gotten there yet. I'm not at the 10,000 follower mark, but I'm going to have to prepare myself.
Yeah, once you start to state like an opinion, like the other day you posted a video. It was the book about the power of now.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that was an opinion. Like you gave it was long. I watched the whole thing. It was like a 3 minute, I don't know, maybe even
yeah,
4 minutes. It was a long video, but
yeah.
I'm sitting there and, it was like a little different because the other videos are a little funny, like there's a little humor in yours. And then he posts a 4 minute long video about the power of now. And I watched the whole thing and I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. This is right on. What he's saying is
Yeah,
right on.
yeah. Well, thank you. Like I mentioned before we started recording, I've tried to shift my goals and my mindset around TikTok to be really focused on like the micro, like helping the students and being there for the students in my school, because those are the kids I work with
Yeah.
every day. And, I know you made a comment about we're not therapists. In my role, I'm all about managing and helping students through conflict. So that's something I do every single day, whether it's a scheduled restorative conversation or something that comes out of nowhere. Um, that's what students know I'm there for. So, like, with the power of now and being in the present moment, I work with so many kids, and I'm sure you have too, where it's like, man, you're spiraling about a conversation you had with a student 2 weeks ago, or something happened in fifth grade, or he looked at me
Yeah.
funny in sixth grade in this classroom. It's like, let's figure out how to move on from that. And I know at the middle school and at the teenage level, those are really those are tough lessons to learn and really be like, this
Hmm.
is something I can practice. But about that video, if you watch that video, I had said, if you're one of my students and you watch this whole thing, give me a fist bump at school, let me know that you saw it. And I tell
Yeah.
you, I got 50 the next day, and the kids were like, I watched your video.
That's
And I had
good.
many conversations with those kids, and we kind of talked about different scenarios. So that's what it's all about for me. That was awesome.
That's good. And you're making a lot of good points right there in that video. Um, and so, like, I was a dean. I was a dean for 3 years. So I was a dean for 3 years, and I felt like when I was in the role of the dean, there was a stereotype of what a dean should be, right? Like, you need to be. At least this is what I felt. So going
Yeah.
into this role, I didn't work at the school, so I was brand new to the school. And usually, you get, at least in LAUSD in Los Angeles, you get voted in to be the dean. So if you're, let's say the dean steps down, then they ask the staff to, like, okay, who wants to be the dean? And then somebody steps up and says, I'll be the dean, and they vote them in. That's what usually happens. But I guess at this school, hmm?
That's
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So at this school, nobody wanted to be the dean, and so I got hired as the dean. I came in and got hired as a dean, and it probably was one of the most difficult jobs that I've ever had out the gate, because I was a classroom teacher, and as a classroom teacher, I felt like I was a rock star. Like, classroom teacher, rock star. Everybody loved me, rock star. I go in as a dean, and everybody dislikes me. Everybody already immediately, oh, here's the dean. Let's walk away from him. Oh, here's a dean. And nobody wants to be around. The kids don't want to be around you. So it was just like night and day. It was just like night and
Sure.
day for me. Did you feel that way? How was it for you?
I don't. You know why? Because like the way that I kind of introduce myself to like the incoming, I'm at a middle school. So the way I introduce myself to the incoming sixth graders, and I feel like the way that a lot of students will view me is, I'd say I'm the number one staff member that students know that they can come to in the building with an issue, whether
It's
that's an
good.
issue with another teacher, whether that's an issue at home with a family member, whether that's something with another student. You say we're not therapists, and I agree with that, but I think the dean role has kind of shifted into a little bit of a social worker role and a guidance counselor role.
Yeah.
So I'm half, you come to me when you need something and I'll be there for you, but I'm also the disciplinarian of the building, and students know that I don't cut corners when it comes to stuff like that. And I hold, and kind of like when you think of a teacher with strong classroom management, you can be there and you could be supportive, and you could you could build great relationships, but that's about holding high expectations and
That's
not
right.
not cutting corners with students, or not giving them not not you can't treat students differently.
Hmm.
So um, I'd like to say I don't feel that way. That doesn't mean that my position's not hard, and that doesn't mean that I don't make brutal phone calls to parents and deal with really intense meetings and issue very serious consequences at times, which is
Yeah.
always difficult to do. But I'm not a staff member that walks through the building where students are scared of. Um, but when they get called to my office, they know that I mean business.
Yeah. I when I said earlier about the therapist thing, I'm not saying that I'm not a licensed therapist. That doesn't mean that I don't talk to students about their behavior and
Of
how to fix their
course.
behavior, restorative justice. I'm not a licensed therapist, but you know, um, for me, it was the same idea. But when I was a dean, when I got to that position, I felt a tremendous amount of pushback for me.
Mm.
Like, I just got in, I went in, like, I didn't start beginning of the school year. I started maybe it was like October, something like that. So I go in there. There wasn't a dean, and there was a tremendous amount of pushback when I went in there.
From
But
who? Who was giving you the
the
pushback?
students,
Oh,
the
sure.
students, yeah, the students, not the staff, the students.
What were they giving you pushback on, the consequences or
No,
in your
no, just
expectation?
being somebody who told them, hey, you can't do that. Just
Sure.
being that guy, being that guy, like, hey, there's no vaping in this area right here. Hey, you can't, you need to go to class. Just those little things, all right. Somebody that's enforcing the rules. There was a lot of pushback when I
Yeah.
first got there, and then it was all about building those relationships with the kids. That first year was about building those relationships with the kids, and then once you build those relationships, then you become that, you become that person where they trust you, even though you have to give out the discipline, even though you have to make those tough phone calls and have those hard conversations. They know that you're about safety, and they know that you're taking care of the school. um, and so that's kind of what I fell into, but it took me a whole year to get to that.
My
It wasn't
my
easy.
my first year in my role as dean of students was the fall of 2021, which, at least in the Chicagoland area, was the first full year back from COVID.
COVID. Yeah.
And my school, up until 2021, was just seventh, eighth graders. And that year, they added sixth graders for the first year. So you had eighth graders who were technically in elementary school when COVID started. You had sixth graders that never
Yeah.
really finished elementary school. And you had a whole school of students for 2 years. And I'm preaching to the choir, but the whole school was revisiting expectations,
Yeah.
classroom management. So I got that plenty from students, and I feel you on that one. And it took at least, I feel like, a full year where it's like, this is how it is around here now, and these expectations are for the best of the school, the safety of the school, your safety,
Yeah.
your health. So I feel you on that one.
How important is it? How important are relationships for you? Like building relationships, strong relationship with students. How important is that?
I mean, if it's tough because when you're handing out consequences and you're holding students to high expectations, it's you want to build a relationship with them, but it's not always reciprocated and it's not always respected.
Yeah.
Then there's, you know, as equally as important as building the relationship with the student, in my opinion, is building the relationship with the parents.
Mhm.
Because if you don't have buy-in from the parents with students that bring issues that are given consequences in the building, you're going to have a tough time building relationships with that student,
Yeah.
because you work with those students a few minutes a day or however long you work with them through that consequence. But without the parent buy-in, it's kind of like they're hearing one thing at home, they're hearing one thing from me. But I think at the end of the day, when you show that you care about them, you work through why they're receiving a consequence. There's that learning piece to it, which I hear you always talking about. Um, you just recently posted a video. It's not always about the detention or giving a suspension or handing out a bunch of after school whatever.
Mhm.
It's about the learning part of it. And
Mhm.
I think if you're giving consequences without the learning piece, there's no relationship to be built, because why do they need to trust you or listen
Yeah.
to you? But when you bring value to the situation and a lesson, it's like, all right, maybe Mr. Goodman knows what he's talking about now, and this is something I could work on.
Yeah. Yeah. I know when I'm in those tough conversations, at least now, when I'm assistant principal, I'm in those conversations now. My thing with the kids is letting them know that it's all about safety. So I'm always about, hey, look, this is unsafe. What you're doing is unsafe right here, and I'm about safety. And whenever you're unsafe, I'm going to intervene. I'm going to intervene when you're unsafe, and that's just the bottom line. So I think that sends a message of caring to the kids. Like,
Hmm.
all right, you're not here to discipline me necessarily. You're here to keep me safe. And when I look like there's about to be a fight or an argument, you intervene. I get it, Mr. Vergara. All right, I understand. Um, when you come into the classroom because I'm banging the door like really loud and I can't control my behavior and I'm not able to regulate my emotions, and you come in there, you're there for safety. You're there to make sure that the kids are safe, that you'll stop banging the door and you'll regulate. you're there for safety. And so
Hmm.
that's the message that I send to the kids all the time, all the time. Whenever I take them out to my office, wherever I go upstairs, up to the classrooms, and have to intervene in the classroom, the conversation is like, "Hey, I care for you. I need to make sure that you're safe. I need to make sure that the kids are safe, that the teacher's safe, and so you need to come with me for a second so you can regulate because you're all full of emotions right now." And I think that that helps a lot versus going in there and just going hard discipline. I'm here to discipline you, call your mom. I'm here to, do all this punishment. No, I'm leading with love and safety. That's what I'm leading with. And you're going to come down and we're going to talk about this situation. And because of the relationship, when I have to hand out consequences, it's easy. I feel like it's easy because, you ever had like maybe your dad or somebody you really respected and all they had to do was like kind of look at you and you're like, oh man, I'm sorry. All they had to do was look at you and
Yeah.
you knew you were like, and there was, that's the feeling that I'm trying to get with the kids I work with is when I come into the classroom, I get a phone call and I have to go up to a room. They see me. They're like, oh, all right, Mr. Vergara, my bad. Let's go talk for a second. That's what I'm shooting for.
Yeah, I agree. Like I think of me and the consequences. Since the beginning of any school year, our students, they know the consequences. They know the scenarios that are going to lead to the consequence. They know what happens if you're caught vaping. They know what happens if you're caught fighting. They know what happens if you're removed from a class twice in
Hmm.
a week or if they have 10 tardies. So it's not like every time a kid comes to my class with any of those issues, I'm sitting there working through what kind of consequence I want to give because we already have a pretty good idea of what that's going to look like. But it's what you said, like they're coming in and they're knowing like this is what I did. Now it's time to work through it. And like I said earlier, that's taken time to build those relationships and have, I feel like, that clout in the building, if you will, where
Hmm.
students know that when they're put in that situation with me, that they're going to be met with love and care, but they're going to be held to high expectations.
Yeah. How do you get that clout in the building?
I Like I said earlier, I think it starts with like there's non-negotiables for me.
Yeah.
So, my big non-negotiable since I started at Elm Middle School was physical altercations, vaping, and racial slurs. We do not, those are non-negotiable as far as consequences handed out, what students can expect if they participate in any of that. And I think the clout not only comes from the students but the teachers, right? They know if a student's getting away with something. They know if there's a part of the school culture that's being overlooked, whether that's kids running late to class without consequences, whether that's kids being overly physical in the hallway with no consequences. So I think just you don't let off the brakes. You hold every kid to the same expectation. You don't play favoritism. And like I said,
Hmm.
it doesn't happen overnight. Just like you, I, I, um, I came into my dean role not even being in the district as a teacher. I was a brand new face, so I had to, I had to build up relationships and that clout with student, staff, and parents, and at the same time make sure I'm meeting expectations of my principal in my district. So
Yeah.
I think it's just holding everyone to the same accountability and expectations. Um, Being very transparent with students and families in
Hmm.
regards to like building respect and trust with parents. If you are not going to be transparent, if you're not going to share with them all the details, if you're not going to do it in a timely manner, they're not going to trust you.
Yeah.
They're not going to trust you making those decisions with their kids.
Hmm.
Um, and those are lessons I've had to learn. So I think it's a combination of all those things.
And so, like, if you were to say, like, how do you help a teacher to get that clout?
Don't put it
What
on
would
me.
you, what would, what would you, don't put it on you? What does that mean? Explain that.
My first year in my dean position. So I don't know how it works with you in your school, but let's say a student gets a behavior write up. We used to use a Google form. right? So what happened? Is it a major, which is a big, serious, need to be removed situation, or there's a minor situation? We ended that school year with 2,000 write-ups, right? Or
Sheesh.
whatever.
Wow.
Just a huge number. And what I had learned is every time there's at that moment what was happening, and not throughout the whole school, and not with every teacher, but when there was a behavior issue, it was immediately put on me. And after that first year, we shifted it a little more, and then a little more, to the point where it's, if there's a behavior issue in your class, the first time it's a classroom managed consequence or a teacher given consequence, not to mention the teacher is responsible for contacting that parent. What I've learned is, and I don't know if you agree or not, when it comes from the administrator first, like let's say a kid gets removed from class twice in a week, when the parent hears it from the dean, they ask almost 100% of the time, why haven't I heard from the teacher yet? Then there's the staff has no ownership, and that's now I'm the one playing middle, in the monkey in the middle,
Yes.
or playing in the middle. So I think, right off the bat, and we implemented this at the beginning of this year, was if you're having issues with a student, or they're showing a major disruption, the first consequence is on you. Here's a list of resources and ways that you can consequence that student that, we'll work with you with. We're also expecting you to make that contact home. The second time or third time, we're expecting to have a sit down meeting, you, me, that student, even that parent, to make, put some solutions in place or set some expectations. But to answer, I gave you a long answer, but the short answer is to put the ownership back on the teachers and not have them depend on me. I want to step in if, like I said, it's a safety concern.
Hmm.
There's an issue of conflict.
Hmm.
Um, but another thing, my first year, there was a huge kind of, not a huge, but a culture in the building of, if I remove a kid from class, I say, go to the main office, just head to the main office. And then they'll intercept them, not even aware of why the kid is here, what happened. I
Hmm.
haven't talked to the teacher. Now we have a really, nice procedure in place where it's more like, let me come to you first. Let me come talk to the kid first.
Yeah.
I'll come to the student. Let me have a conversation. If I feel like this is a safety concern, or if I feel like the class cannot learn because of this, how the student's acting, I'll pull them myself. If it's something that we could work through together, I don't want them to lose out on their instructional minutes. That's not fair. Um, so we've really changed our culture around, like, teachers know that they don't just bounce kids from the class without, I don't want to say approval from administration, but there has to be communication. And we know that there were interventions and steps taken before a student is removed from class. And that
Yeah.
includes a first parent contact, that includes their own consequence. That doesn't happen in the first 4 minutes of class.
And I posted multiple videos about this, and I get tremendous pushback with this one where I say, if you're a classroom teacher and you're always sending a student like out of the classroom, and letting somebody else have to handle it, like the dean, then you start to lose your power. You start
What
to
do you
lose your
think?
power.
Yeah, what do you think that student thinks about that teacher? Right? Like, how do you think that student feels about what that teacher thinks about them?
Yeah.
All I got to do is make a mistake, and they're going to bounce me, and I'm going
Yep.
to be Mr. Goodman's issue. Um, and and like I said, I've been proud of our staff because that culture has seriously changed. Um, and I think students know that, and they come to me when it's like a last case scenario.
Yeah.
Um, Especially in like that moment situation, like getting removed from a class, that happens few and far between.
Yeah. At least at the school that I work for, my staff is great as well. So the times that I get, students sent to me, or I have to go to a classroom, it's because of a safety issue. It's because something's going down where the safety of the teacher, or the safety of the students, or safety is a matter. Um, there might have been a fight, and so I go up there for those reasons, right? Something that might be criminal. Those are the reasons why I get called in.
Mm,
My staff is good, and they know that. you know, even though I say, you know, in my post, you lose your power or whatever, if they call me, if they call me, like they pick up the phone, call me, and say, Mr. Vergara, we need you. Something's going on in the classroom. I don't hesitate. I don't hesitate. I don't be like, oh, you know what? I don't hesitate. All right, you need me? Let me go up there. Let me go up there. Um, and I take care of it for a number of reasons, right? One is that, you know, I want to support my staff. So I support my staff. I'll go up there, right? And then if it was something minor, we'll talk about it. Like, hey, but then also too, I do want to send a message to the students that when the phone gets picked up and they say Mr. Vergara's coming, Mr. Vergara's coming. He's gonna come. It's not like, oh, he's hiding off in the office or he's not. No, no. I called him and he's coming. And I need that message to be sent to all the kids at the school. Like, oh,
Yeah.
they called the principal, the assistant principal, and he's coming in. That's the message I want to send as well.
Yeah. I think there's a big difference between an administrator saying, it's on you, I'm not going to support, and rather than it being kind of like what you said, which is my philosophy too. If you need me, I'm there for you. If you feel like like it's best if I come and talk with that student, I will always trust a teacher.
Yeah.
I want you to manage. I want you to take ownership. I want you to, you know, bring lessons and values to the situation. And I also want you to call on me if you feel you need me. So I think that that blend is really important.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I had a funny situation the other day. I guess, you know, my staff doesn't really, they kind of know now that I'm on social media and I have what's it called? A
Podcast.
podcast here. And one of them said to me, he was like, hey, I saw that little video you made about like, you know, you lose your power about sending somebody to the administration. He tells me, he goes, I'm never going to send anybody to you. I start laughing. I'm like, you never do. I go, you never send me anybody. So what are you even talking about? You never send me. Not, I've been here for 3 years and not one time, 3 years you've ever sent. And I go to your classroom just to visit, you know, and when he's laughing or whatever. But you know, like if they call me, I go. I don't hesitate at all.
That's good. Yeah.
So, do you feel like teachers will lose their power? Do you feel like teachers will lose their power if they do something like that? Always send or
Like I mentioned, I think it's just, I think especially like, you know, you're in elementary school, is that correct?
yeah, right now
You get
it's a
to
K
middle
through
school.
six.
I
School's a
think when you're
six.
working with, I think when you're working with teenagers, they become very aware and cognitive of the things that happen around them. And when a student is removed, like I mentioned, if you're removed from class in the first few minutes of class or after the making a single mistake or looking, you know, whatever it is, the students are aware. They keep track in their head and they know that this is a teacher that's not trying to keep me in the classroom. So there is some ownership lost in that. But like I said, I feel like we work hard with staff and students to figure out what are the expectations that aren't being met that are leading to these
Yeah,
consequences. What are the steps that we could take to solve that? Um, you know, I feel like this is unfortunately like that time of the year where, you know, we have students that have been with the same teacher all year long. And, you know, eighth graders are, you know, they graduated today, but eighth
yeah,
graders are finishing, seventh graders are ready. So I feel like
yeah,
everyone's kind of like, you know, the expectations and you're kind of over that at this point. But like I was saying earlier, it's kind of, it's, it doesn't matter what time of the year it is, continuing those expectations, continuing building relationships, and not necessarily putting it on administration unless you feel like it's absolutely necessary.
yeah, yeah. Um, and I'm gonna say this that when it comes to necessary, because I always get this, you know, in my comments when I feel like it's necessary, it's because it's criminal. Like because the safety of the classroom, there was an assault, right? There's some sort of maybe there's sexual harassment, there's some sort of harassment. Okay, yeah, of course. Whenever you feel like it could be criminal, it could lead to, or you know, the safety of the students, then I'm in there immediately. I don't hesitate at all.
How often do you use your school resource officer or even the police department with in conjunction with your consequences? For example, like at our school, if a student is caught vaping, they'll receive a consequence from us, but then we also issue them a ticket for bringing drugs into the building. So, how often do you lean on them in those situations?
It sounds like you got way more support than us over here in LA. It sounds
Well,
like
I have to keep in mind that I don't technically work in Chicago public schools. I have before. I'm in a small community of
okay.
maybe the population's 30,000. It's a quarter mile away from Chicago. It's the closest neighborhood
Yeah.
or suburb, if you will. But it's a small knit community. Our district is two elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school,
Oh, wow.
and the community takes their community and their schools very seriously.
Yeah.
And I would say that we do have support from our resource officers.
That's awesome. It sounds like you're in a great environment. It sounds like the way you talk about your school, the way you talk about your school and how you set up these systems, and all these systems are in place. And I'm like, man, his systems are intact. He knows what he's talking about here. When it comes to school police, they dismantled a lot of the school police. I think we're like, I don't know, a third of what we used to be. So, if I call school police, it's a big issue, right? It has to be a big deal for them to come out. Um, so when it comes to, like, we've had in our elementary school, possession of marijuana, stuff like that. Um, I could call it in. Doesn't mean that they're gonna come. Doesn't mean that if something else happens at the local high school or something bigger, they're gonna go over there. We're just a small little elementary school, so
Sure.
so we don't have that kind of like what you're saying, those type of resources like you have. But let's go back to the systems that you're talking about. Um, I feel like if you're gonna create a great environment, like a great working environment, I think that the when it comes to admin needs to set the tone when it comes to just a great working environment. And a lot of it has, do you guys give positive behavior assemblies? Do you do that?
At the start of every trimester, we do like trimester 2 reset, trimester 3 reset, where we're reviewing. It's basically the same PowerPoint. We're going over everything again,
Yeah.
from hallway, how to walk in the hallways, to how to handle yourself at lunch,
Yeah.
to what to expect if you're caught vaping, to who do you go to if you are need a classroom, or you want to switch your schedule. So we host a minimum of 3 of those a year.
Yeah.
If our administration notices there's something going on in the school that needs to be addressed, we'll host it like a presentation. So one good example would be like our 8th grade lunch this year it was just getting out of control. Not out of control. That's not fair for me to say about them. But expectations weren't being met. So we hosted our own 8th grade lunch presentation where we went over everything again. Here's the expectations. Here are the consequences for not meeting those expectations.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like we do a good job being kind of like excuse my mouth, but like CYA, right? Check your butt. Like,
Yeah.
if the students should, unless they're not listening, they should be aware of the expectations and the consequences. So as far as like those systems, um, the communication piece is there. And not to mention, the other good thing is when we do those presentations, we'll put it in our newsletter out to the parents. Just so you guys know, this week we talked to kids about
That's
bus
good. Look at you.
expectations. We talked to kids about, some of the things we're seeing in the building. We talk to kids about, if you get 10 tardies in a week to your classes, this is what's happening. So if a parent gets upset or a student gets upset, it's like, we said it, man, that this is what we said was going to happen. So,
Yeah.
um, and you didn't question us when, we had that presentation or we put it in the newsletter. So, you know, we got to be on the same page with this.
Yeah. That whole newsletter piece, that's a great piece. That's a great idea. I'm gonna have to take that idea from you
Yeah.
and use it
My
in my school.
my principal taught me that one. Like, whenever I'll be like, man, we have a lot of issues on the bus this week, or um, a lot of kids are late after lunch to their 6th period class. We'll do an initiative, or we'll put something together, and she'll be like, put that in the newsletter. Make sure that the parents know about that. And at first I was hesitant because I didn't want to. I was going to be like, damn, I'm going to get a lot of pushback, and you know, I kind of want to just like address it if I have to,
Yeah,
but that it's actually worked out in our favor because it's like when I get pushback from, a student or parent, it's like like I mentioned just a minute ago, the information was available to you. You were aware, your family was aware. Another good example is recently with our eighth grade graduation and all of the things that we do with eighth grade. We have an eighth grade dance, we do an eighth grade breakfast, there's an eighth grade field trip. So those last couple months for eighth grade, we hold them to a very high expectation. So if you get suspended, if you get caught vaping, if you get in a fight, you know what you're losing out on,
that's
and
right.
that's non-negotiable. So
That's
that
right.
was a chance you were willing to take.
That's right. Do you have a positive incentive program, like a cop being good program or anything like that?
The one that comes to mind for us at the moment was a focused on attendance. You work on attendance at your school, John?
A little bit. We do. We have attendance awards. We have every month we have a student of the month assembly, and our PSA counselor, she does attendance, and we hand out trophies, and it's like a big deal for
Sure.
us. It's another way to, promote good attendance, and it's a fun way. So we do that.
So I've done I oversee attendance and the tardies at my school, and initiatives around that have been big for me this year. One of them around like you know I was tracking our high flyer for tardies for first trimester, and I met with all of them being like, hey, let's try to cut this down in half. If you can cut this down in half, you know you can pick from this and this. We did another initiative where we looked at students with a certain amount of days absent. I think it was like between 11 and 13 days, and our goal was to keep them under 18 days. So we met with all of them. We're like, hey, you've missed 11 or you've missed 12. That's okay. But it's important to us that you're at school the rest of this year, and these absences need to be excused. And we met with those parents, and that initiative was huge. Even just the parent reach out like, hey, we're aware of the absences. We appreciate you calling them in, but your child is missing a lot of school. And unless it's absolutely necessary, we
Yeah,
expect them to be here. Our attendance improved greatly after that. As far as behavior, one initiative that I've kind of created, we call them a student success agreement, or you might call it a behavior contract, where let's let's look at students will be referred to through our MTSS process or through like our meetings with teachers, and we'll say Johnny's having issues with getting out of his seat, yelling out, and you know pushing other kids. Let's Those are our agreements. We're going to work on those. This is your incentive if you meet it. This is the consequence if you don't. This is the date that we're going to check on this. Your parent signs it at the bottom, so we're all on the same page. I'll see you in
yeah.
3 weeks, and we'll see what's going on. So those are a couple things we've done.
That sounds like a great. It sounds like you guys create a great working environment where the teachers feel like they're supported, where there's systems in place, and it sounds like you got things moving in the right direction.
We're
I
trying.
don't know if that's the case for everybody, but for you guys, and whoever listens to this podcast, if you're an administrator, take note because Mr. Goodman has some good things at his school.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's some good stuff. Um, yeah, what other things are you guys doing to keep a positive environment at your school?
Yeah, we do. We try to host a lot of assemblies, and not and by a lot I mean I think this year we had five.
Okay.
Like I said, we do those trimester reset presentations, but we also have a trimester celebration every trimester. If one of our sports teams makes it to a championship, we usually do like a big walkout ceremony, or we'll do an assembly for them. Um,
Mhm.
I think we have really big buy-in with like band, choir, sports, kids going to games, kids wanting to go to games, and having themed dress up day, like everyone do a blackout for this basketball game, or everyone wear red. We're playing this team tonight. So I think a combination of all those has helped just bring, positive vibes to the school. We do a lot of little competitions too. I feel like through our what we call advisories, or you might call them homeroom or something like that. We run a lot of different like fun activities like that through advisories, where the advisory with no tardies, the advisory with the best attendance, the advisory that has the best growth on their standardized test. Maybe they'll get a pizza party or something else. We also do a lot of fun things for our staff, and that's run through our principal too, where she'll do like a weekly song over the intercom, like caller number 5 who knows the song will get this award. Teachers love that, dude. I mean,
Yeah,
it makes such a difference. And you hit like for teacher appreciation week. I mean, she went crazy with the what she bought, what she gave to them, how she supported them, and you could feel that, like not
that's
just
good.
through like the emails saying thank you to the admin team, but you can tell that the vibes are good. So it's not just about initiating the students, but giving incentives for those staff members too.
Yeah, man. So like earlier I had talked about creating an environment of safety, love, and progress, right? And everything that you talked about, you keep a safe environment. You have systems and procedures in place where students know that when they come to school, this is how it is, and you hold them accountable. And then you demonstrate love by these awards, these assemblies, these things, these blackout nights, these you're just showing love. You're showing love, 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 and these are all. And then you create an environment of progress where, like, okay, we're gonna give it, you got less tardies this week, you got a higher score on your state test, we're gonna celebrate that, we're celebrating this, we're gonna celebrate that, we're gonna highlight that. And because of that environment, I don't even know, like, I don't know nothing about your school, but I bet you that school runs smoothly.
No,
I bet you that
things
school.
have been good. Yeah, things have been good. I It makes me think of an article I recently read where they surveyed thousands and thousands of kids. I think it was in the New York City area, and there was a question like, what's the most important thing to you about being at school? And the number one answer was, I want to feel like I'm part of the community. I want to feel like I'm
Yeah,
a part of the school. So, like I said earlier, our choir kids, they have big positive culture. The band students, the art club, like the vibes are good in those parts of the school where it's not like they're outcasted or they're not loved. They feel the love. People go to those choir concerts, people go to the art show, um, people join those clubs. So absolutely,
yeah.
it's crucial.
And so, like, when it comes, I don't know if you have gangs, I don't know if there's gangs around your area or whatever.
Yeah, a little bit. Not we don't work with it too much. Maybe at the high school a little
Yeah,
more. And there's a little bit of affiliation with some of the close by Chicago neighborhoods, but nothing too major from my experience. More when I worked in Chicago public schools, but not in my
yeah.
current role.
So you had said that the students want to be part of a community, right? They want to be part. They
Mhm.
want to feel love and be part of a community. I feel the same way as well. Like, the students want to be part of a community, but when you take the students with difficult behavior and you're just always pushing them out and pushing them away and pushing them somewhere else, like, let's get rid of this kid. This kid deserves to get punished. Let's like, get him out of class. He's not in here. You keep telling him this kid this way, but he just wants to be part of a community,
Mhm.
and he wasn't raised with, like, somebody didn't tell him about having good character, and somebody didn't tell him how to regulate his emotions, and maybe he doesn't spend time with his family, right? So you got this student with this background going into your school, and he's just getting pushed away, but all he wants is to be part of community. And this is where I feel like gangs come into place, where, okay, you want to be loved, but you at home, you're not really taken care of, and at school you're not taken care of. So you know who's going to take care of you? The neighborhood gang right here will take care of you. We'll show you love, we'll bring you in. And I think that that's, at least in the area that I work at, I feel like that's how we push kids out and into gangs in that area, And so one of my goals at my school is to always make the kids feel welcome, even the kids that always have difficult behavior, because I don't know how their home life is. I don't know what they went through, um, and so I just got to make sure that you don't know how to regulate emotions. Let me help you out. You don't know about respect or being responsible or being held accountable. I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to show you how that's done. It's all about learning, all about teaching. That's what I feel like. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when I think of my students that have the most conflict or behavior concerns or things like that, um, there's typically a degree of something going on in their home life, right? and I'm not saying that they don't come from great families that have, you know, privilege or opportunity, but there most of the time there's something going on. And that's something that, you know, staff and admin need to always take into consideration.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what do you do with students that are always getting pushed out and they're always like just in your office, they're always in trouble? What do you do with those kids?
Yeah. So, you know, like I've talked about, working through the situation, figuring out the lessons involved. There has to be communication or partnership with the teacher at some point. Obviously, like if a kid's being removed, we're not going to talk to the teacher there and then, but we're taking time out of our week to sit down, us three, me, the student, the staff member, sometimes the parent, to figure things out.
Yeah,
Um, we've always felt like the worst case scenario, which is a little easier at the middle school level than maybe the elementary level, is change the student's schedule. You know, a
yeah,
lot of times the family will be like, "Hey, can he just move to that class? I know you have another social studies class at that
yeah,
grade level." But my philosophy, and I feel like, you know, it's kind of the culture we built in the building, is you can't pick the principal that you work for, or you can't pick your
yeah,
superintendent. And as an adult, the answer is not always to quit if you don't like your boss or you don't agree with your boss, or um, there's conflict or not a great relationship with your boss. You can't just switch your job every time that happens, and you can't just switch your class every time you're not getting along with the teacher. So um, it goes back to, you know, are we using that student success agreement? Do we have an intervention in place? Um, I prefer to answer your question more. What can we do to keep that student out of my office, rather than what am I doing with that student every time he's out of my office? Because I would say in any classroom in any year, if a student's been removed more than like 5 or 6 times, you know, we need to reevaluate and reconsider what's going on here. I would prefer it not get to that point. Another thing we do is we issue break cards. So if we see that there's a student that maybe it's after lunch or maybe it's a certain period of the day is just acting a little too goofy or having trouble meeting those expectations, you're kind of allowed your own break where you're allowed to go get a drink of water. You're allowed to come see me. You're allowed to come sit on the couch outside my office without worry of a consequence. Like, and we want the students to take ownership over that, but that's like, hey, I'm taking my break. I'm feeling this. I know I'm about to either get a consequence or get removed or get Mr. Goodman called on me. So I'm going to take my break. Or the teachers will say, hey, Johnny, it's why don't you go take your break card? Um, but I prefer any of those options rather than how do I continue, you know, how do I continue working with Johnny every week in the same classroom? I'd
yeah.
rather figure out how to keep him in the class.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And do you suspend kids?
Most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
You're allowed, your district allows you to suspend.
yeah. So our, like I meant earlier, I mentioned our big three non-negotiables are physical altercations, vaping, racial slurs. Those are non-negotiable suspensions for me. At the very least, a 1 day suspension leading up to, like, if you're caught vaping multiple times in our district, selling drugs, fighting multiple times, you would most likely be put up for expulsion.
Wow.
Um, I think this year we'll finish with about 50 plus suspensions. But those range from like in school suspensions that were given through too many tardies to too many behavior write ups to fighting to vaping to racial slurs to, you know, inappropriate physical touching, you know, but we
Yeah,
do suspend. Yeah.
yeah,
That's our last, that's our last case scenario. But it's also, it is the non-negotiable for those things that I mentioned, and students and parents know that. So, you know, I think our students are aware of what happens when you're suspended. What, you know, what are the next steps? Like I mentioned earlier, vaping is one where we get support from our school resource officer where they get ticketed and they have to show up to court. We've even implemented a system where if you're caught vaping, you get suspended, you get a ticket, you have to do 10 community service hours that I
Wow.
administer at my school.
Wow.
And then you have a month to do that before you have to show back up at court. And I get to let the judge know if you finish the 10 hours or not. So
Wow.
we have high expectations.
Wow. What you're saying doesn't happen over here in my district. All the things that you're saying right there, and maybe that's why we feel so hamstringed over here. Maybe that's why we feel,
Sure.
yeah, like we don't have that much power necessarily, and we can't. It's such a hassle for in my district for us to actually go through a suspension like that.
So what do you do if kids are fighting?
We don't suspend. We don't suspend. So let's just take that. Um, so if there's a fight in my school, you know, they come to the office, they see the principal, they see myself, and there's a whole write up. So we have a system of reporting. So we report it on our system, and we have two systems. We report on both systems. One is for minor infractions, one's a higher infraction. So we put it on the higher infraction one. We call parents, we have the conversations. We let the parent know, that this was considered an assault, and you're free to press charges if you like. That's up to you. As far as us here at the school, we're gonna handle it the way the district wants us to handle it. So these are things that we're going to do, but you're more than welcome to go ahead and press your own charges and do your own thing. As for us, we're following the district, what the district tells us to do in this case scenario. um and this is for me, and maybe this is why I rely so heavily on relationship building and stuff and trust and all that stuff, because I literally feel like what you're saying right now, like if I had that as a tool, like if I had that, like, hey, you could get suspended for that. That would be I'd feel so much more. I'd feel like I'd have more tools in my bag to help students be successful.
Well, you have in your role, John, you have to build the relationships, I feel like, because
Yeah.
I'm a student that if I fight, I'm going to talk to my assistant principal, they're going to call home, I'm going to go back to class. If I don't have a relationship there's not going to be a lesson learned, I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. What's the point? I hate to say that, and I know that I'm sure that's something that you deal with though, Larry, because and I feel like Chicago Public Schools has recently kind of shifted to minimal suspension, no expulsion. Um, but they're seeing rise in conflict and fighting in their schools.
Yeah. And if you don't, like, I feel like if you don't have somebody like that at your school who is like building those relationships and trying to like figure things out, I could see how you feel like nothing ever gets done. Like if there's nobody there to make sure to keep everybody in check and make sure that everybody's, if you don't have that person there building those relationships, I could see how you feel like, man, this school's falling apart. What are we doing here? Like how do we stop this kid from misbehaving in this classroom? All he does is misbehave. I could see how you could feel like your school is falling apart. And so I guess my role in the environment that I'm in the system that I work in is like, all right, I know what the system is like. I know what tools I have available, and I'm gonna use those tools as best as I can and do the the best job that I possibly can to keep an environment of, like I said, safety, love, and progress, man. That's what it's about. So,
Well, I know
hey,
your kids are they're blessed, and they should be proud to have you.
thank you. We're gonna come toward the end of the podcast right here, and before we end the podcast, I always ask, if there's three tips that you could give to future educators or somebody that might want to be a dean. Three tips that you could give to somebody else that might want to be an educator, a teacher, or a dean.
Sure. I would say number one, as far as like dean or administrator, a tip, you know, like I've said, when you're in my role, you're making intense phone calls to families, and you're unloading on them details that they're not expecting, right?
Mm,
Your son was caught vaping today. Your child sent these types of pictures to another student.
mm,
Your child was just in a fight, um, and you're issuing consequences. So one tip would be around this idea, which I've recently kind of come to terms with, is parents will always do what they believe is best for their kids, even when that doesn't align with the school,
yeah.
and even if that means they feel like their kid can do no wrong. The school is wrong. You're wronging my child. The parent will always do what they feel is best for their child,
Yeah.
and building those relationships with parents and being transparent is crucial. You cannot be successful in a dean position without that. I would say number two would be focused on having thick skin slash not taking things too personally,
Mm.
especially in your first year as a dean or an administrator. If you take things too personally, if you don't have a thick skin, you can get eaten alive, and you won't be able to meet expectations because you'll be answering to all the wrong people, and you know you'll be undermining the goals that you had. Number three, and I would say the most important thing to me, is the work life balance. For me, I'm sure you've heard it. I love my job. I love what I do. I have a good time. Um, my home, my wife, and my girls come number one.
Yeah.
So anything that happens to me at school, um, I'm able to erase it and come home and spend time with my wife and my girls, and that's the most important thing to me. Um, not and with that being said, not so much, not being scared to take time off of work, putting your family first, putting your relationships at home first, and then you'll be more successful in your career. So,
Those are
uh,
good.
do my three tips.
Those are good. Mr. Goodman, thank you so much for coming on the podcast
This was
and
awesome.
sharing your wisdom. And like I've learned a lot from you when it comes to like these systems that you have in place. And like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to use some of these systems that
Maybe it's
Mr. Goodman's talking about.
maybe it's time for my own podcast.
Maybe it is, man. Maybe it's time for your own podcast. Start it up. I'll be a guest. I would love to come on. You ask me questions. I would love to come on your podcast.
This was awesome. Thank you for having me.